Hello friends, in this video we are going to discuss the concept of budget and some historical facts of budget in Indian context. This will be very much useful for the students, for the teachers who are teaching public finance, and also the people who are preparing for civil service, and they need to know the basic concept of the budget. Now, what is a budget? We should know that the first we should know the concept of budget. If you try to understand the word budget itself, then this word comes from late Middle English or the old French word budget, that is Bougette, and which meaning is a leather bag, and or originally it meant a pouch or a wallet, and in 18th century or in mid 18th century, the chancellor of exchequer, in presenting the annual financial statement, it used to be called as to open the budget. So that means to open the leather bag. That means probably they used to carry the printed copies of the budget, and that is why when the budget is presented, it used to be called as open the budget or open the leather bag. But from 19th century, late 19th century, you have seen this the use of the word budget has been extended to other fields beyond the government sector. Now, I have provided you some photos that from the very beginning in India, all our finance ministers used to carry a leather bag in which they used to carry the printed copies of the budget. So you will find the first finance minister of this country after independence, Mr. Shanmugam, also carries a leather bag in which there are printed copies of the budget. Similarly, all other finance ministers have carried a leather bag in which you will find all the printed copies of the budget. But this tradition was broken by the present finance minister, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman. She did not carry any leather bag. Rather, she carried the budget in a beautiful red colored cotton bag, in which typically it looks like a government file. Okay? Most of the government files are tied and with a red tab. So like that, the finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman has carried the budget within a red color packet of red cloth, and this has been tied neatly. So that is the origin of the word budget. It comes from the French word, and then which means leather bag. Now, when we say budget, it is basically opening the leather bag in which there are a lot of printed copies of the budget. So that is the origin of the word. Now, coming to the budget in India, in the constitution, it is written that it is the description is given on the annual financial statement. So there is no description of the word budget in the constitution of India, and in the constitution there are two articles which talk about the annual financial statement. One is article 112 for the union government, and article 202 for the state governments. So basically, when we talk about the budget in India, it refers to the annual financial statement of the union government or the state governments, and which is also backed by the constitutional provision, Article 112 for the union government and Article 202 for the state governments. Now, coming to the budget of the union government, Article 112 of the Constitution says that the President shall cause to be laid before both the houses of the Parliament a statement of the estimated receipts and expenditure of the government of India, which is called as the annual financial statement for that year. So here the key words are Article 112 of the Constitution says that President will cause the cause to be laid before the houses of Parliament the receipts and expenditure. So when you say annual statement or budget of India, it basically refers to the estimated receipts and expenditure of the union government for the coming fiscal year. Okay, and so that is basically the budget, and that is presented before the parliament, and then finally that is debated and discussed, and then that gets the approval of the parliament, and then that goes to the approval of the president of India. So that is Article 1 and 2. Now, when we say budget, it has receipts and disbursements. So, disbursement basically the expenditure, and all these things, all the receipts and expenditures are accounted under three parts of the budget. So, in a budget, basically there are three funds that is discussed. One is the consolidated fund. So, this consolidated fund is basically written in Article 266 1 of the Constitution of India. Now, what is this consolidated fund? Remember, all the taxes, direct and indirect taxes, those are collected from the people of this country. All money goes to the consolidated fund of India. And similarly, all the disbursements that happen, that means all the expenditure that happen from the government of India happens from that comes from the consolidated fund. So all the receipts and expenditure of the government of India comes from the receipts goes to the consolidated fund, and the expenditure also comes from the consolidated fund of India. So Article 266, 2666 talks about this. And there are two other funds also discussed in the budget. One is the second one is consolidated, the contingency fund, and the public account. What is contingency fund? Now, remember, to spend a single rupee from the consolidated fund, you need approval of the parliament. But there would be some emergency situation in which we need to spend money urgently. So, for example, there is a natural disaster or there is a war. So, then from where you get the money? So, to avoid that kind of undesirable situation, we have kept some contingency fund that if situation is required, then this money can be spent from the consolidated fund. So that's during natural disaster, you'll find the money is used from the contingency fund. Okay, and similarly, we also have a public account. So public account is basically the account of the public. That means the people of this country, basically all the government employees who contribute to the public provident fund, that money is deposited on their PPF. But this money is managed by the government of India, and that is why it is known as public account. So this money belongs to the public, but that money cannot be spent by the government of India because that money is not belonging to the government of India. So if at all government has to spend money from the consolidated from this public account, then government can only borrow from this. But remember, the rate of interest, everything is decided by the government of India. So this is public account is basically the government of India provides the banker service to the people who are contributing to the provident funds, okay, and that is deposited under public account. So remember, the day-to-day transactions happens from consolidated fund. In case of emergency, we use a contingency fund, and public account is the account in which all the provident funds of the government employees are deposited. In case of central government employees, it is the central government that manages the public account. In case of state government, the state government employees contribute to the provident fund that is managed by the state governments. So these are the accounts, and these are shown in the budget. Okay? And so Article 112 talks about the annual financial statement or the budget of the Union Government of India. Now, coming to the state governments, we have the constitutional provision 202, and instead, that the governor is the constitutional head. So the governor makes or governor causes to be laid before the house or houses, depending on the state in which whether there is one house or two legislatures of the state. And so the governor makes this, causes to be laid before, and so of course the finance minister presents the annual financial statement in which again the estimated receipts and expenditure of the budget for the coming fiscal year are presented by the finance minister. So that is debated and discussed in the legislative assembly, and then that goes to the governor for the final approval. And just like the union government, For the state government budget also, there is a consolidated fund, there is a contingency fund, and there is a public account. I should tell you some more information here that when the government faces an election or the government is in transition, we can take the example of the present government. The present government came to power in the month of May, and so they know that if in the present budget in the month of February or March, then they cannot do a plan for the next government. So they presented an interim budget for 2 or 3 months. That means from new fiscal year, that is April and May, they had made some provisions for 3 4 months, so that when the new government comes, the new government gets some time to prepare its own budget, and so that there is no disturbances in the there is no discontinuity in the expenditure. So the government presented an interim budget. In fact, here again there are two different concepts. One is the vote on account and another is interim budget. In case of vote on account, which is again a part budget, in case of vote on account, there is no provision for the new tax proposals. Only government plans for the expenditures. But in case of interim budget, both the tax proposals and expenditure estimates are provided, and the present government basically did that. The government led by Prime Minister Modi presented the interim budget in which there are both tax proposals as well as expenditure proposals. Now, so finally, how to define the budget? So budget is an annual financial statement of the government for the coming fiscal year in which the estimated receipts and expenditure of the government are presented. Okay? So it is the estimated receipts and expenditure of the government for the coming fiscal year. That is budget. Now we'll discuss some historical facts on the budget in India. So the first Indian budget was presented by James Wilson. Remember, this is pre-independence. That's not telling historical facts. Okay, so James Wilson presented the India budget on 18th February 1869, and his designation was finance member of the India Council that advised the Indian Viceroy. Okay, so Mr. James Wilson was the first finance minister who presented a budget for the British ruled India. Now, coming to the independent India, India got independence in 1947, and our first finance minister was Mr. R.K. Shanmugam Chetty. Remember, he did not belong to the Congress party. He was, in fact, in the Nehru's first cabinet, there are many people from non-Congress party. Okay? And I think it was, he belonged to the Justice Party of India, basically, which was a pro-British party. But then he was very educated, and then he was the finance minister. So after independence, India got independence on 15th August 1947, and it took some time to prepare the budget because India again was India was divided into India and Pakistan. So the budget that was presented before partition will not be applicable. That is why they had to do some work, and that's how on November 26th, 1947, Mr. R.K. Shanmugam Chetty presented the budget in the parliament. And you can see this budget. And remember, when the budget was presented, there is two budgets. One is the railway budget and the general budget. So so that's a part one of the budget is basically the railway budget presented by the railway minister, and then part two of the budget is basically general budget. And this is the introduction of the speech of the finance minister in 1947. And this budget was meant for only 7.5 months, starting from August 1947 to 31st March 1948. And the total expenditure estimated in that year was only 197.39 crores. Okay, so remember this number. The first budget in independent India was presented by Mr. R.K. Shanmugam Chetty, and the total estimated budget was only 197.39 crore, out of which a large part went for the defense, that is 92.74 crore went for the defense services. So that is that is the first budget of independent India. Then, no, again, you will find the other finance minister presenting the budget, but then another historic budget was presented by Dr. Manmohan Singh during the prime ministership of P.V. Narasimha Rao, and then this was basically newly, government that came to power, and then on 24th July, that's so that means before 1991, 24th July, there was an interim budget presented by Jaswant Sinha, and but when the new government came to power, they presented the budget on 24th July 1991. And you know that this budget is historic because we adopted the liberation, privatization, globalization, and in this budget, so the total expenditure was 1,13,422 crores. Okay, and there is a huge jump, okay, because in the first budget I told you that the expenditure was only 197, less than 200 crores, but within about about 50 or so less than that, we had a huge jump in the size of the budget. And in 1991 budget, Dr. Manmohan Singh presented budget worth 1,13,422 crores. And his speech was also very powerful, and it is also said that Manmohan Singh had presented the longest budget in the country. And the media, again covered the media gave a very wide coverage to the budget speech. And I should read the last paragraph of the budget speech of Dr. Manmohan Singh. He said that, "Sir, I do not minimize the difficulties that lie ahead on the long and arduous journey on which we have embarked." Basically, he's saying this because all the liberation, privatization, and globalization policies were adopted. So there is a historical change in the policy paradigm in the country. So that's why he quoted Victor Hugo once said, "No power on earth can stop an idea whose time has come." So I suggest to this august house that the emergence of India as a major economic power in the world happens to be one such idea. Let the whole world hear it loud and clear. India is now wide awake. We shall prevail. We shall overcome. So that was very powerful speech of Dr. Manmohan Singh. So you can get some reminiscence of the first Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who had said, "When the world is sleeping, India is awakening." Similarly, Dr. Manmohan Singh also said that India is now wide awake, and it is again now aiming to become a world economic power. So that was the ambition of Dr. Manmohan Singh when he presented the budget in 1991 on 24th July. And then there are some major changes in the budget that has happened. Some major changes in the budget tradition that has happened in the country. We should know that after India's independence, the budget used to be presented at 5 p.m. On the last working day of February, and that practice continued till 1999. Now, why 5 p.m.? Because that was the time in India, which is basically at 11 o'clock in England. And since before independence, the budget of India used to be presented in England at 11 o'clock. So the matching time in India was 5 p.m. and that's how the budget presentation continued till at 5 p.m. till 1999. And when Jaswant Sinha came to power, when Prime Minister was Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, in 1999, he changed this practice, colonial practice, and he started presenting the budget at 11 a.m. Similarly, another major change happened during the tenorship of Prime Minister Modi, and they stopped presenting the budget on the last day of February, and now the finance minister, of course, now Arun Jaitley is no more. He started presenting the budget on 1st February, and basically, why they basically advance the date of presentation of the budget, that if the budget gets approved in the parliament early, then the funds can be released to the states faster. So that is the whole motive behind it. And but it again, it breaks the colonial practice. Similarly, I told you that in the first budget we had two parts. One first part was for railway and railways, and then second part was for the general budget or the finance, and that was also merged in 2017. And so now these are the changes. Now we find that the budget is presented on 1st February of every year, and then now both railway budget and general budgets are merged, so we find only one common budget. Now, if you look at the budget 2020-21, I told you that now Nirmala Sitharaman doesn't carry any leather bag, so she carried the printed copies of the budget in a cotton bag, so very beautiful pouch, you can see. And now, what is the budget size in 2021? It was now 30 lakh 42,230 crore. 30 lakh 42,230 crore. So remember, we started with only 197 crore in 1947. Then in 1991, we had reached more than a lakh crore. Okay, and then now we are presenting a budget worth 30 lakh 42,230 crore. So this is how the budget in India has evolved over about 70 years, 75 years. And now, if you want to know more, if you want to get more information about the budget starting from 1947 till date, you can read the budget speech. You can look at the numbers that is available in this website. That is budget of Government of India. That is indiabudget.gov.in. So you can find all the budget speeches, then previous year on budgets. All these things are available here. Now, with this, we conclude the discussion on the budget. In my next video, we shall discuss from what all sources the union government gets money, and what are the expenditure obligations of the union government. Similarly, from what all sources the state government gets revenue, and what are the expenditure obligations of the state governments. That we shall discuss in the next video. Thank you for watching this video. If you have liked this video, you may subscribe this channel, and you may also ask your friends to subscribe the channel and share this video with others. With this, we conclude. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching the video.